world into which Leonardo da Vinci was born was one of contrasts, a place where shadows and light seemed to dance across the same canvas. Imagine 15th century Italy, a land brimming with power struggles and shifting alliances, yet also glowing with the brilliance of art, science, and rebirth. It was a renaissance, a time when the boundaries of what was possible seemed to stretch outward like the dawn. In this age of discovery, when maps were still being redrawn and the heavens still a source of speculation, one child arrived who would quietly and persistently challenge the limits of human imagination. Leonardo was born in 1452 in the small town of Vinci, surrounded by rolling hills, olive groves, and the timeless rhythm of the Tuscan countryside. The simplicity of his birthplace stood in sharp contrast to the vastness of his future visions, and perhaps that tension between humble earth and limitless sky would shape him for the rest of his life. As a boy, Leonardo was already different. Accounts tell us of a child who studied the movements of animals, the flow of rivers, the way light rested on a leaf. His eye was endlessly curious, his hand restless to draw what he saw. At a time when most people lived firmly within the routines of their villages and the teachings of the church, Leonardo's gaze stretched outward and inward both, seeking secrets in the smallest veins of a plant and in the farthest reaches of the stars. It was as though he sensed that the world was more mysterious than it appeared, and that by observing carefully one might step closer to truth. Yet to understand Leonardo, one must also understand the contradictions of the Renaissance. This was a period when beauty flourished in the works of painters, architects, and poets, but it was also an era marked by violent conflict. Italian city-states like Florence, Milan, and Venice rose to wealth and power, but their riches were often guarded by mercenary armies and sharpened swords. Knowledge itself was a battlefield. The rediscovery of ancient Greek and Roman texts clashed with long-standing religious traditions, producing tension between reason and faith, between science and doctrine. Into this turbulent landscape stepped Leonardo, painter, engineer, inventor, philosopher, anatomist, never content to belong to one category, always walking the thin line between light and shadow. The gentle listener can picture him as both part of this world and outside of it, a man who attended the courts of dukes and kings but who often wandered fields in solitude, collecting leaves, sketching birds, or writing notes in his mirrored hand. The contrast is striking, a man employed to design weapons of war who also painted the Mona Lisa's serene smile. A man who studied the flight of birds with childlike wonder, even as he drew machines meant to conquer the skies. He lived in an age that craved certainty, but what Leonardo offered was the unsettling and luminous power of questions. And in those questions, inventions began to take shape. Some were rooted in practical needs: machines to lift heavy stones, bridges to carry armies, canals to control water. Others sprang from sheer wonder: flying machines, humanoid automatons, devices that seemed to anticipate future centuries away. Many of these designs remain sketches on paper, impossible to realize with the technology of his age, yet they whisper to us across time, as though Leonardo left them as dreams meant for future generations. His notebooks, scattered across Europe, are filled with thousands of such designs, sketched with elegance, annotated in tiny handwriting reversed as though seen in a mirror. The pages themselves look like windows into another dimension, where art and engineering merge, where the possible and impossible touch. But why dwell on these inventions tonight, in this quiet space? Because they reveal not only Leonardo's brilliance, but his mystery. They remind us that behind every great discovery lies a shadow of uncertainty, and behind every design lies a whisper of imagination. As you listen, it is worth remembering that Leonardo's world was not so different from our own. His Italy was a place of uncertainty, where progress and danger walked side by side. Inventions could promise both hope and destruction, beauty and terror. Leonardo seemed to understand this duality, and his notebooks reflect it. They are filled with both graceful wings and armored tanks, with both bridges and siege engines. He was a man of light and shadow, and his inventions reflect that balance. This beginning invites us to drift gently into his world, to feel the Renaissance not as a set of dates or names, but as an atmosphere. The scent of oil paint in Florence studios, the sound of church bells echoing through narrow streets, the murmur of rivers moving under stone bridges. It was a world restless with change, full of curiosity, but also haunted by uncertainty. Into this world stepped a man whose mind was never still, who lived half in reality and half in vision. The question that lingers as we turn the first page of this journey is simple yet endlessly deep. Were Leonardo's inventions blueprints of the future, or were they dreams, delicate, impossible, fragile as the wings of the birds he loved to watch? In the sections to come, we will wander slowly through these sketches, pausing to consider both their elegance and their strangeness. Like walking through a quiet gallery at night, we will move from one invention to another, allowing curiosity to guide us while the calm of the evening keeps us at ease. For now, let the image of young Leonardo, gazing upward at the sky of Tuscany, linger in your thoughts. His story is just beginning, and with it, the strange and beautiful world of his inventions. If Leonardo da Vinci's mind was a universe of endless questions, then his notebooks were the stars scattered across that sky, fragments of brilliance captured before they could drift away. The codices, as they are known, form the heart of his legacy as an inventor. To imagine them is to picture stacks of parchment filled with intricate lines, sketches of machines, diagrams of anatomy, lists of observations, and tiny notes scribbled in reverse script, as though meant to be read only in a mirror. These notebooks are not orderly treatises, but rather living streams of thought, chaotic and abundant, reflecting the restless movement of a man who never stopped observing, questioning, and imagining. They are both archives and mysteries, objects of study and sources of wonder. When we look at these sketchbooks today, many housed in museums and libraries across Europe, their pages seem to hold a strange glow. Some sheets are stained with ink smudges, others worn by the centuries. Yet the images remain crisp. Bird with outstretched wings, machines coiled with gears, studies of muscles stretched taut beneath the skin. Each drawing feels alive, as though Leonardo's hand has only just left the page. There is a certain intimacy in these sketches. They were not created for patrons or public display, but for himself, for his own understanding. In their margins, we find not only invention but also curiosity unbound by expectation. The mirrored writing is itself a subject of mystery. Why did Leonardo write this way? Some suggest it was a way to keep his ideas private, perhaps to shield them from competitors or authorities. Others believe it was simply more natural for him, as a left-handed man, to write backward and avoid smudging the ink. Whatever the reason, the effect is undeniable. His words become encrypted, adding to the sense that the notebooks are coded messages from a distant mind. To hold one is to feel both included in and excluded from his world, as though standing on the threshold of understanding but never quite stepping fully inside. The notebooks cover nearly every subject imaginable. In one, we find plans of flying machines, delicate wings stretched like those of bats and birds. In another, war machines, massive crossbows, armored cars, and cannon that never fired in his lifetime. Elsewhere, we encounter maps, hydraulic systems, architectural visions, and strange contraptions with wheels and pulleys. Then, almost suddenly, a sketch of a human skull, the lines of its structure drawn with precision that could rival modern anatomy. The flow of topics is dizzying, yet for Leonardo it was natural. He did not see boundaries between disciplines. Art, science, engineering, and philosophy were not separate compartments, but threads woven together in one fabric. For the nighttime listener, there's a meditative rhythm to these notebooks. Imagine turning the pages slowly, the rustle of parchment under candlelight. On one sheet, the shadow of a bird in motion. On the next, the blueprint for a machine meant to capture that motion in wood and metal. Leonardo's mind leaps from the natural to the mechanical with ease, as though both were part of the same conversation. This interplay of observation and invention reveals his philosophy. To invent, one must first observe. To imagine, one must first see clearly. And yet, much about these sketches remains unresolved. Some designs are so advanced that they seem prophetic, concepts of helicopters, submarines, and robots drawn centuries before their realization. Were these meant as genuine proposals, or as thought experiments, sketches of dreams too fragile for reality? Scholars debate endlessly. Some argue that Leonardo never intended most of his inventions to be built, that they were exercises in imagination, flights of fancy recorded in ink. Others believe he envisioned practical futures, but lacked the materials or technology to bring them to life. Perhaps the truth lies in the tension between the two. His notebooks are both practical and poetic, both blueprints and dreams. Another curious aspect is their incompleteness. Many designs break off mid-thought. A gear system drawn without explanation, a note trailing off, a half-finished diagram. It is as though Leonardo's mind moved too quickly for the page to contain. These fragments can feel haunting, like whispers of ideas lost to time. The listener might imagine Leonardo pausing in mid-sketch, distracted by another thought, leaving behind only a trace of what might have been. His notebooks are filled with such traces, paths that lead somewhere but never arrive. These codices were not neatly bound in his lifetime, but scattered across different patrons and collectors after his death. Some were lost, others rediscovered centuries later. The Codex Atlanticus, perhaps the most famous, contains over 1,000 pages of his notes, preserved in Milan. The Codex Leicester, once owned by Thomas Coke and later acquired by Bill Gates, reveals Leonardo's fascination with water and the movement of rivers. Each codex holds a fragment of the larger mosaic, but none give us the whole. It is as though Leonardo's legacy was deliberately fractured, leaving us to piece together his vision like a puzzle with missing pieces. The effect of reading these notebooks today is both inspiring and humbling. We see in them a mind that refused to be limited, a thinker whose questions reach far beyond his time. But we also feel the mystery of what is absent, what pages may have been lost, what inventions never made it into ink, what dreams Leonardo carried silently. The sketchbooks are shadows and light. They illuminate his genius, but they also remind us of the vast unknown that surrounded him. In the quiet of the night, the image of Leonardo bent over these notebooks becomes almost dreamlike. We picture him by the dim glow of an oil lamp, the scratch of a quill on parchment, the occasional smudge where ink bled too quickly. Outside, the streets of Florence or Milan may have been filled with noise, but inside his study there was only the sound of thought translated into line. Each sketch was a bridge between reality and imagination, a place where what was seen and what was dreamed met on the same sheet of paper. And so, the notebooks invite us to linger. They are not only records of invention, but mirrors of the human desire to understand, to create, to reach beyond. They whisper that knowledge is not a fixed possession but a journey, one that moves between clarity and obscurity, between precision and wonder. In them, Leonardo left us not just machines, but questions that remain alive centuries later, drawing us deeper into the mystery of his mind. As we prepare to step into the inventions themselves, the sketchbooks serve as our doorway. They are the quiet chamber where imagination begins, where ink becomes a vessel for possibility. Through them, we glimpse both the clarity of Leonardo's vision and the shadows that conceal its full meaning. And in that balance, between the light of knowledge and the dark of mystery, we find the perfect rhythm for our journey, slow and contemplative, like drifting into sleep with a story still unfolding. Among the many strange inventions that Leonardo da Vinci left behind, none capture the imagination quite like his machines for flight. At the center of these dreams is the ornithopter, a device designed to mimic the beating wings of a bird. In the stillness of the Renaissance night, Leonardo must have stood for hours, gazing at the skies, watching pigeons wheel over rooftops or falcons soaring high above the Tuscan hills. He observed their wings not with idle curiosity, but with the precision of a man searching for secrets. How did they rise from the ground? How did air, invisible yet powerful, hold them aloft? Could humanity, bound to the earth, one day share in this freedom? The ornithopter was Leonardo's answer to those questions, a machine of wood, cloth, and human effort. His sketches show a frame shaped like the skeleton of a bat, with wings that stretch wide, designed to flap as a person inside powered them with arms and legs. The pilot would lie face down, moving pedals and levers that pulled at ropes, which in turn moved the wings. It was not a glider in the modern sense, but a direct imitation of living flight. Leonardo's note suggests he believed that with the right combination of muscle strength and mechanical advantage, a man might beat the air into submission and rise into the heavens. For the listener tonight, the image is both wondrous and strange. Picture a shadowed workshop, the dim glow of an oil lamp falling across sheets of parchment. On one, the delicate curve of a bird wing traced with careful lines. On another, a human figure strapped into a contraption of wood, attempting to take on the grace of a creature born to the skies. The sound of scratching quill on parchment seems almost like the rustle of feathers. Leonardo was, in his own way, building a bridge between dream and reality, between the earthly body and the endless expanse of sky. And yet, as inspiring as the ornithopter appears, it was doomed to remain a dream. Human muscles are not powerful enough to lift a body and a heavy machine into the air through flapping alone. Even with Leonardo's brilliant designs, the laws of physics stood in quiet opposition. No matter how finely he measured, no matter how faithfully he copied the mechanics of wings, the human body was simply not built for such flight. To us today, It seems obvious. To him, it was an untested frontier, a question worth pursuing. His failure was not in designing something impossible, but in daring to imagine that the impossible might be made real. But failure, in Leonardo's world, was not the end. His notes reveal a mind that learned from every observation. He studied birds in mid-flight, noticing how their wings curved, how their tails shifted to steer, how air seemed to fold and unfold around them. He even dissected birds to understand the structure of muscles and bones. For Leonardo, the ornithopter was not merely a machine but a study in nature's elegance. He believed that if humans could only unlock the secrets of natural flight, they too could soar. His drawings are filled with annotations, reflections, small corrections. They are not the confident blueprints of a finished invention, but the restless marks of a mind forever questioning. There is also a poetic side to these designs. The ornithopter, though impractical, stands as a symbol of humanity's longing to transcend limits. It is less a machine than a metaphor, the dream of leaving behind the heavy weight of the earth, of reaching towards something higher. Leonardo captured that dream in lines and curves, in ink that still speaks centuries later. When we see the sketch of the ornithopter, we are reminded of our own dreams of flight, of standing as children and watching birds with wonder, of feeling the wind and imagining what it might be like to rise upon it. And while Leonardo's ornithopter never flew, the vision within it would echo into the future. Centuries later, inventors would build gliders, hot air balloons, and eventually airplanes. Each step brought humanity closer to the sky, until the dream became reality. In some ways, Leonardo's drawings planted a seed, perhaps not in direct technical terms, but in imagination. He showed that the sky was not only the realm of birds and angels, but a frontier that humans could aspire to. For those drifting into sleep, the ornithopter invites a gentle reflection. Imagine lying back, closing your eyes, and feeling the rhythm of wings. Not the heavy effort of wood and rope, but the graceful sweep of air lifting you upward. You rise above Florence, its towers and streets shrinking below. The Arno River glimmers like silver in the moonlight. Hills roll into the distance, and above them, the stars. You are suspended between earth and sky, carried by a dream centuries in the making. In that quiet vision, Leonardo's impossible invention becomes possible, if only for a moment. What makes the ornithopter so captivating is not that it failed, but that it embodies a courage to dream beyond boundaries. Leonardo lived in a time when most people accepted the natural order without question. Birds flew, humans walked. But he asked, what if it were otherwise? That single question transformed him from an observer into an inventor, from a painter of wings to a designer of machines meant to mimic them. The ornithopter is a monument not to what he built, but to what he dared to imagine. As we leave this invention behind, the story drifts into a paradox. Leonardo's designs of flight reveal his most childlike wonder, but they also mark one of his greatest impossibilities. They stand on the threshold between science and dream, between the physical limits of his age and the boundless reach of imagination. In that tension lies the true beauty of the ornithopter, not as a machine of wood and cloth, but as an eternal symbol of the human desire to rise above. From here, our path will darken slightly as we turn from dreams of the sky to machines of war. Leonardo's mind, so attuned to the beauty of birds in flight, was also compelled to design devices of destruction. The contrast may feel jarring, but it was part of the man himself, light and shadow, wonder and fear, creation and devastation. And so, as gently as a page turns, we leave the fragile wings of the ornithopter and move toward the rolling shell of an armored car. From the delicate dream of wings, we now descend into the heavier world of gears, cannons, and iron. If the ornithopter was Leonardo da Vinci's most poetic invention, then the armored car stands as one of his most formidable. At first glance, it seems like a vision torn from centuries later, a rounded vehicle shaped like a turtle shell, bristling with weapons, capable of moving across a battlefield while protecting its crew inside. In the flickering light of Leonardo's workshop, the design must have looked both astonishing and unsettling, a reminder that the same hand which painted the serenity of the Mona Lisa could also imagine machines of destruction. The sketch itself shows a dome structure, broad at the base and narrowing toward the top. Around its circumference, small gun ports jut outward, giving the vehicle the power to fire in all directions. Inside, Leonardo envisioned a team of men turning cranks that connected to gears, which in turn moved the wheels. In theory, this human-powered engine would allow the armored car to roll forward across uneven ground, crushing obstacles in its path, while delivering cannon fire without exposing its operators to enemy attack. To the Renaissance eye, accustomed to open battlefields of soldiers on foot and horse, such a device would have been almost unimaginable. But as with many of Leonardo's designs, the armored car reveals a tension between possibility and impossibility. The gearing system he drew, if built exactly as sketched, would have locked the wheels against one another, making forward movement impossible. Some historians believe this was no accident. Leonardo may have deliberately introduced a flaw, ensuring that no one could misuse his design for real warfare. Others argue that it was simply an oversight, a small miscalculation in a mind juggling too many visions at once. Either way, the armored car never left the parchment. It remained an idea, preserved in ink, rather than a force unleashed on the battlefield. Yet the image itself carries power. Picture the armies of the late 15th century, knights in gleaming armor, cavalry charging across fields, infantry with pikes and bows. Into this scene, imagine a great rolling dome of wood and iron, advancing steadily while shot and arrow bounce harmlessly away. It is an image that feels both alien and prophetic. The modern tank, developed centuries later, seems to echo Leonardo's vision almost exactly. Was he peering into the distant future, or merely combining elements of his own time into a design that would prove prophetic by chance? The answer, like much in Leonardo's work, remains suspended between certainty and mystery. For the listener tonight, there is something haunting in this invention. Unlike the ornithopter, which symbolized a longing for freedom, the armored car embodied the weight of conflict. Leonardo was no stranger to the darker side of patronage. Much of his career was spent in service to powerful rulers. Ludovico Sforza in Milan, Cesare Borgia in Romagna, men who measured genius by its usefulness in war. Leonardo offered his skills in letters, boasting of siege engines, mortars, and weapons that could devastate enemies. Yet one cannot help but notice a strange pattern. Many of his war designs, including the armored car, contain flaws that made them impractical. Was this his silent rebellion against violence? Did he sketch machines of destruction with one hand, while subtly ensuring they could never be built with the other? There is also the paradox of Leonardo's nature. He filled his notebooks with studies of peace and harmony, drawings of rivers, notes on ideal cities designed to prevent plague, sketches of plants unfolding in gentle spirals. At the same time, he produced visions of death-dealing machines, armored cars, and giant crossbows. These opposites did not seem to conflict in his mind. Perhaps he saw invention as neutral, neither good nor evil, its morality determined only by the hands that wielded it. Or perhaps he recognized the truth of his age, that survival, art, and science were all intertwined with the politics of war. As we drift deeper into this story, imagine standing beside Leonardo's sketch of the armored car. The dome curves upward, smooth and heavy, its surface like the shell of some primeval creature. Through its slits, fire can rain out in all directions. Inside, men strain at the cranks, their muscles powering the motion of the beast. Yet the sketch is silent. The wheels do not turn. The cannons do not roar. It remains forever potential, forever trapped between dream and nightmare. This is a shadow that lingers in Leonardo's designs, not only the brilliance of what could be, but the uncertainty of whether it should be. The armored car also reminds us of how Leonardo perceived machines, not only as tools, but as extensions of life itself. His fascination with nature often bled into his inventions. Bird became the inspiration for flight, rivers for hydraulics, and here, perhaps, the armored car echoes the body of a turtle, slow but invulnerable beneath its protective dome. The blending of natural and mechanical forms gave his designs a strange vitality, as if they were alive in their own way. His armored car was not just a machine of wood and metal, but a kind of creature imagined into existence, halfway between beast and technology. For centuries, the armored car remained only an idea. No workshop attempted to build it in Leonardo's lifetime. Yet in the 20th century, engineers reconstructed his design using modern tools and materials. The results confirmed what the drawing suggested. The flawed gearing prevented it from moving as intended. Even corrected, its heavy bulk and human-powered engine made it impractical. And yet, to see the model built was to feel again the eerie sense of prophecy. The form was unmistakably that of a tank, a weapon that would reshape warfare centuries after Leonardo's hand left the page. Hey, then lies the contrast that makes this invention so compelling. The ornithopter speaks to our yearning to rise. The armored car speaks to our fear of destruction. Together, they show the duality of Leonardo's vision, the balance of light and dark within a single mind. He was both dreamer and engineer, poet and pragmatist, artist and servant to war. His armored car stands as both a warning and a marvel, a reminder that invention cannot escape the shadows of its age, and that genius is as capable of imagining death as it is of imagining beauty. As the listener drifts further into this gentle narrative, the armored car rolls quietly into the distance, never built, never fired, but never forgotten. It is one of Leonardo's strangest gifts to history, a machine that never existed, yet which still shapes our understanding of invention and conflict. And as we leave this vision behind, we step toward another set of designs, this time lighter, more hopeful. From the heavy dome of war, we move to the slender arcs of bridges and the grand visions of cities. For Leonardo was never content to dwell only in destruction. He dreamed also of connection, of structures that carried people safely across rivers, of cities designed to breathe and endure. From the heavy armored dome of war, our path leads us now toward gentler visions, designs not of destruction, but of connection and survival. If Leonardo da Vinci could dream of machines that rolled across battlefields, he could also imagine bridges that lifted armies and cities that gave at people space to live, breathe, and thrive. To step into this part of his imagination is to feel the balance of his genius. The same mind that sketched weapons of power also traced lines of compassion, of shelter, of human order against chaos. In the 15th century, bridges were lifelines. They linked cities across rivers. They carried trade routes. They decided the speed of armies. To control a bridge was to control movement, wealth, and safety. Leonardo's notebooks reveal several sketches of bridges, some small, light, and portable, others vast and ambitious, spanning waters no one had yet dared to cross. One of his most remarkable designs was for a collapsible bridge meant to be carried by troops. Built with a clever system of ropes, hinges, and supports, it could be assembled and disassembled quickly, allowing armies to cross rivers that might otherwise halt their progress. The image of such a bridge feels almost symbolic. Picture soldiers marching, burdened by armor, halted before the rushing waters of a river. In that moment, the river is a wall, nature itself standing in opposition. Then, as if from nowhere, wooden planks and ropes unfold, rising into a stable arch, floating or resting upon pilings, and suddenly the path is open again. Leonardo's bridge was more than wood and rope. It was a promise that obstacles could be overcome by ingenuity, that even nature's barriers could bend before human thought. Yet beyond the battlefield, Leonardo also dreamed of bridges that carried the grace of permanence. Among his designs is a plan for an enormous bridge, one so vast that many thought it impossible. In 1502, he proposed to the Ottoman Sultan a bridge across the Golden Horn in Constantinople, a single span reaching farther than any built at the time. His design showed a sweeping arch, low and wide, that could bear the weight of traffic while allowing ships to pass beneath. For centuries, people doubted whether such a bridge could ever be built. And yet, in the 21st century, engineers reconstructed Leonardo's design on a smaller scale in Norway, proving it would have worked. Once again, his hand seemed to reach across the centuries, whispering solutions that his age was not yet ready to embrace. But Leonardo's most striking civic vision was not a bridge at all, but a city. Milan, where he spent many of his working years, was dense, chaotic, and plagued often by outbreaks of disease. Narrow streets and poor sanitation meant that illness spread swiftly, carried by the closeness of human life. Leonardo, ever observant, studied this problem with the same patience he gave to flight or hydraulics. His solution was radical, a city redesigned from the ground up, with wide boulevards, carefully managed water flow, and different levels for different kinds of activity. In his notes, he imagined a multi-level city where commerce and traffic would occur on the lowest streets, while residences and living spaces rose above, bathed in light and air. The canals, which already crisscrossed Milan, would be cleaned and expanded, serving both as transportation routes and as tools for sanitation. Waste would be carried away by water, preventing the stagnant filth that bred disease. Homes would be built with order and symmetry, the chaos of crowded alleys replaced with balance and clarity. He called it an ideal city, not just a place to live, but a design that preserved life itself. It is striking to realize how modern this vision feels. Today, urban planners speak of walkable streets, clean waterways, and separation of traffic for safety and health. Leonardo's city contained all these ideas, centuries before the vocabulary of public health even existed. His city breathed. It was designed not only for survival, but for comfort, beauty, and the dignity of those who live within its walls. And yet, like so many of his visions, it remained a dream. Milan did not rebuild itself in Leonardo's time. The plague returned, and the narrow streets remained. His designs, precise and thoughtful, lay dormant in his notebooks. Still, they remind us that even in an age when war and patronage shaped the course of invention, Leonardo could pause and imagine a city not for kings or generals, but for ordinary people. He could sketch a bridge that made armies stronger, but he could also trace the plan of a city that made life gentler. For the listener drifting with these words, let the image settle slowly in the mind. A city of wide, sunlit streets, where water flows cleanly through canals, where markets bustle on one level and homes rise peacefully above. Imagine walking across a bridge that curves gracefully over the water, its form simple yet elegant, steady beneath your feet. The city does not choke or confine. It welcomes. It breathes. It feels alive. What connects these inventions, bridges and cities, is Leonardo's gift for seeing structures more than stone and timber. To him, bridges were not just crossings, but lifelines. Cities not just clusters of buildings, but organisms that could be healthy or sick, depending on their design. His vision was not only mechanical, but deeply human. He asked not just, how does this work? But also, how does this serve life? There is a gentle harmony here, a balance to the darker machines we left behind. The armored car spoke of fear and destruction. The bridge and the city speak of hope and renewal. Together, they form a portrait of Leonardo not only as an engineer, but as a caretaker of imagination, a man who dreamed of lifting others, of carrying them across obstacles, of giving them air to breathe. As the story flows forward, we will leave behind the grand scales of bridges and cities and turn inward again into the delicate details of the human body. For Leonardo's I was never satisfied with structures of stone and wood alone. He sought also to understand the living structures of flesh and bone. And so, from cities that breathe, we move next to bodies that live, hearts that pump, and the silent mysteries revealed in ink and chalk upon the page. From bridges and cities, where wood and stone obeyed the laws of geometry, Leonardo's gaze turned inward, into the fragile and mysterious temple of the human body. For him, the body was itself a kind of city, bones forming arches, veins like winding rivers, muscles pulling like ropes, and the heart a pulsing engine hidden deep within. To study anatomy in his time was no simple matter. Religious restrictions and cultural taboos cast a long shadow over dissection, and yet Leonardo persisted, driven by an almost reverent curiosity. Where others saw taboo, he saw a gateway to understanding, a chance to witness the harmony between design and life itself. Imagine him, by candlelight, in the quiet chambers of a hospital or monastery, bent over the stillness of a human form. His pen would move quickly, recording what his eyes revealed. He sketched muscles not as abstract lines, but as bundles of fibers, mapping their movements like ropes tightening and loosening across the skeleton's framework. He traced the arteries and veins as though they were irrigation canals feeding fields, branching with exquisite order. He drew the heart not as a symbol, but as a mechanical pump, valves opening and closing with precise rhythm, ensuring the flow of life. His notebooks contained drawings so exact, so layered with observation, that they would not be surpassed for centuries. To Leonardo, the body was both a mystery and a machine. He saw it as art, beautiful in its proportion, delicate in its symmetry. But he also saw it as mechanism, a living device where every part worked in harmony with the rest. The lungs were bellows, the bones were beams and levers, the tendons were pulleys. Even the smallest motion, a finger bending, an eye turning, was for him a marvel, a dance of forces perfectly tuned. In his vision, there was no divide between art and science, between soul and structure. The human form was at once sacred and mechanical, flesh and spirit bound in a seamless design. What makes this all the more astonishing is the accuracy of his discoveries. At a time when medical knowledge often relied on texts copied from antiquity, sometimes wrong, sometimes incomplete, Leonardo trusted his own eyes. He noted that the heart septum was not porous, challenging an ancient belief held since Galen. He drew the fetus within the womb with startling tenderness, depicting not only anatomy but also the fragile curve of unborn life. He studied the spinal cord and nose, considering how impulses travel from the brain to the body, imagining communication networks centuries before electricity would explain them. In his notebooks, science and poetry met, muscles described in terms of ropes and wheels, but also as instruments playing the silent music of movement. And yet, for all his precision, these studies carried a shadow. He was often alone in his wake, his dissections conducted in secrecy, his notes written in mirrored script perhaps as protection. There is something ghostly about the thought of him, pen in hand, tracing the curve of a rib or the twist of a tendon while the rest of the world slept. His sketches preserve a stillness, as if each line were a moment of reverence for the mystery of life. He was not dissecting to destroy, but to understand, to honor the structure hidden within every person who walked the streets of Florence or Milan. For the gentle listener, the thought invites a moment of reflection. The human body, so familiar, so taken for granted in daily life, revealed itself to Leonardo as something both fragile and eternal. Consider your own heartbeat, steady and quiet, working without command. Consider your breath, rising and falling like the tide, without effort. Leonardo looked at these same rhythms and saw them as miracles of design, machines built not of gears and iron, but of flesh and blood. His sketches remind us that within each of us lies an architecture as wondrous as any cathedral, as intricate as any city. And here lies the contrast so often present in Leonardo's life. He designed war machines to destroy bodies, and yet he studied those same bodies with awe and reverence. He sketched weapons that could end lives, and yet he traced the very structures that made life possible. It is as though he was caught in the tension of his time, between service to powerful patrons and loyalty to his own endless curiosity. The paradox is sharp, but it also makes his legacy richer. He was not only an inventor of machines, but a witness to the greatest machine of all, life itself. His anatomical drawings would not be published during his lifetime. They remained hidden, scattered in notebooks, unseen by the world that might have learned from them. When they resurfaced centuries later, physicians marveled at their accuracy, realizing how far ahead Leonardo had been. His work prefigured discoveries that would only come with modern science: circulation, biomechanics, embryology. It is humbling to imagine how medicine might have advanced had his notes been shared sooner. Yet perhaps it was fitting that they remained private, almost sacred, until the world was ready to understand them. As we linger in this part of the story, let the body itself become a source of quiet wonder. Feel the weight of Leonardo's gaze, both clinical and tender, as he revealed what was hidden. The body as machine, the body as art, the body as mystery. In this balance of light and shadow, his sketches still live, whispering across time that to know the body is also to know the miracle of being alive. From here, the path of our journey bends outward again, from the intimate landscape of flesh and bone to the infinite expanse of sky. For Leonardo, the body was not the only structure worthy of flight. Birds called to him, their wings spreading against the horizon, their movements a promise of freedom. And so, from hearts that beat and lungs that breathe, we turn next to wings that soar and dreams that lift the human spirit skyward. From the silent chambers where he traced the hidden anatomy of the human body, Leonardo's mind lifted upward, toward a dream as ancient as humanity itself, the dream of flight. For as long as people have gazed at birds, they have wondered what it would be to soar, to slip the bonds of earth and glide freely through the sky. In Leonardo's time, this longing was both fantasy and frustration. Myths told of Icarus, who flew on waxen wings only to fall. Stories of magic carpets or angels in flight captured imagination, but no one had yet translated these into working reality. And yet, Leonardo believed that by understanding nature, by studying its forms with patience, humanity might claim the sky. In his notebooks, we find page after page dedicated to flight. He sketched birds in motion, their wings in different positions of beating, gliding, and hovering. He filled margins with notes about air currents, about the lifting force of feathers, about the balance of weight and motion. He was not content to imagine flight as enchantment. He wanted to grasp it as physics, as mechanics, as a careful study of how creatures had mastered what humans could only envy. To Leonardo, the bird was not merely beautiful. It was a teacher, offering lessons written in the arc of its wings. Among his most famous designs is the ornithopter, a machine with great wings meant to flap like those of a bird. The sketches show a pilot lying face down, arms and legs connected to pulleys and levers that would move the wings. It is an image that feels both visionary and impractical, an attempt to mimic nature's design without the understanding of modern aerodynamics. And yet, there's poetry in it. Imagine the feeling of strapping into such a device, stretching the wings wide, and believing that with enough strength, enough precision, you might take flight. For Leonardo, even the dream itself was worth recording. He also studied gliders, devices with fixed wings that would catch the air like sails. These designs hint that he understood flapping alone might not be the solution. He even devised parachutes, canopies that could allow a person to descend safely from heights. His drawing of a pyramidal parachute is so simple and elegant that when modern experimenters built one using his proportions, it worked. Centuries before the first hot air balloon rose into the sky, Leonardo was sketching tools that could make the air itself a pathway. The ambition of these flying machines reveals more than technical curiosity. They show Leonardo's fascination with freedom, with breaking the limits imposed by gravity and circumstance. The Renaissance was an age of exploration, when ships set sail across uncharted seas. For many, the ocean was a frontier. But for Leonardo, the true horizon was above. He imagined humanity not just as earthbound, but as skybound, capable of joining the birds he so carefully observed. And yet, woven into his notes, there is also caution. Leonardo recognized the danger of flight attempted without preparation. He wrote that one must study thoroughly, must learn from birds and from air itself, lest the dream turn deadly. His warnings echo the story of Icarus. Flight pursued recklessly could end in a fall. The balance between aspiration and humility is clear. The sky called to him, but he knew it demanded respect. For the gentle listener, it is easy to let these images drift across the mind. Picture Leonardo walking in the fields outside Florence, pausing to watch a hawk circle on rising currents of warm air. Imagine him sketching the curve of a wing, noting how feathers spread to catch the wind. Picture the ink flowing as he drew devices that had never been built, wings larger than any man could carry, frames of wood and cloth that existed only on the page. In these sketches, there is both the stillness of dreaming and the restless urgency of a mind unwilling to stop at the possible. What makes his flying machines so haunting is the fact that they were, for his time, impossible. No material strong enough, no engines powerful enough, no understanding of lift and drag sufficient to make them work. They remain visions, fragile as paper, scattered in notebooks. But perhaps this impossibility is part of their enduring charm. They remind us that imagination need not be bound by immediate practicality. They remind us that the human spirit dreams not because it always succeeds, but because dreaming itself is a form of freedom. And in a quiet way, Leonardo's dream of flight came true. Centuries later, when the Wright brothers first lifted their plane from the sands of Kitty Hawk, they did so not as magicians but as engineers, following a path that Leonardo had already glimpsed. He had not solved the puzzle, but he had framed it, shaped it, and left behind a gallery of visions that still inspire. His ornithopters may never have flown, but they remain symbols of the yearning to rise, to see the world from above, to be unchained from earth. As this part of our journey closes, consider the duality again. Leonardo dissecting lungs and studying respiration, then sketching wings and flight. Breath and sky, body and air, grounded life and soaring dreams. Always, he sought to unite opposites, to find harmony between the seen and the unseen. His flying machines were not failures. They were reminders that vision is itself a form of invention. From here, the story descends gently back to earth, but not to leave wonder behind. For Leonardo's curiosity extended even into the quiet corners of nature, into water, rocks, and landscapes that seemed eternal. He turned his pen toward rivers and mountains, toward storms and erosion, seeking in the movement of earth the same balance he sought in the movements of wings. And so, from the open sky, we step into the flowing rivers and shifting stones of the natural world, where Leonardo once again revealed the poetry of science. From the soaring heights of Leonardo's flying machines, we now return to the ground beneath our feet, the patient earth, the flowing rivers, the mountains whose shapes tell stories older than memory. Leonardo's notebooks reveal not only a fascination with bodies and wings, but also with the natural world itself. To him, water, stone, and soil were not silent. They spoke in movements and patterns, rhythms that, once observed, revealed laws as intricate as any mechanism. Where others might see only a river winding or a rock crumbling, Leonardo saw hidden forces, invisible structures shaping the visible world. Water was his most beloved subject. He called it the driving force of all nature, and his sketches reflect this devotion. He studied its motion with the patience of a poet and the precision of an engineer. He drew whirlpools spiraling like galaxies, waves breaking against rocks, and droplets scattering into the air. He examined how water carved valleys, how it wore away stone, how it carried silt from mountains to plains. His eyes caught details that most would never pause to notice, the way eddies form behind obstacles, the way ripples spread outward in circles, the way a current twists when it meets resistance. For Leonardo, water was not only useful, it was alive, restless, always moving between states of calm and violence. He imagined canals guided with precision, rivers tamed for irrigation, even hydraulic machines powered by flowing water. In Milan, he studied the city's canal system with an engineer's focus, suggesting improvements for transport and for cleanliness. But beyond practical designs, there was a spiritual depth in his fascination. He wrote of water as if it held secrets of the cosmos, its ability to reflect light, to take the shape of a container, to transform from liquid to vapor to ice. He sensed that in water, the visible and invisible met, that it was both a substance and a symbol of change. Rocks and mountains drew his attention with equal force. He climbed into the hills of Tuscany, sketchbook in hand, and studied cliffs, caves, and layers of stone. He realized that the lines within rocks told a story of time, of pressures and shifts hidden beneath the surface. Long before modern geology, he understood that seashells found on mountain tops meant that land had once been underwater. He sketched strata as though they were pages of history, recording the slow transformation of Earth itself. Where others saw immutable stone, Leonardo saw process, erosion, deposition, upheaval. He glimpsed what we now call deep time, the endless cycles of creation and decay that shaped landscapes over millennia. Storms fascinated him, too. His drawings of deluges and tempests are almost apocalyptic. Torrents of water crashing down mountainsides, wind whipping trees into spirals, whole landscapes dissolving under the fury of nature. These images might feel chaotic, but to Leonardo they revealed hidden order. He was searching for the geometry within turbulence, for the patterns that underlay even the wildest destruction. His pages of whirling water resemble galaxies, tornadoes, or even the twists of human hair, echoes of the same spiraling forms repeated across scales. He seemed to sense the unity of nature, how the shape of a river's eddy and the curl of a strand of hair obeyed the same rhythm. There is a meditative calm in realizing how far ahead his mind wandered. Today, science explains fractals, chaos theory, and the mathematics of turbulence. Leonardo, with no modern tools, glimpsed these truths by watching rivers flow and storms gather. His notebooks are filled with sketches where observation turns into poetry, the line of a river resembling the curve of a leaf, the spiral of smoke mirroring the spiral of water. He seemed to say that the world was woven of repeating patterns, and that to study one corner of nature was to touch the whole. For the listener drifting with these words, imagine sitting by a quiet stream, its surface rippling gently, sunlight flickering on the water. Imagine Leonardo at your side, sketching the flow, noting how the ripples spread and fade, how stones shift the current. Picture him lifting his gaze to the mountains, seeing in their ridges not permanence but transformation. To him, water and rock were not opposites but companions. Water wore away rock, and rock guided water's flow. Together, they shaped valleys, carved rivers, built the stage upon which life unfolded. And here again we meet Leonardo's gift for contrast. He designed machines of war, yet he also studied the gentlest ripple on a pond. He built visions of flight, yet he also traced the patient erosion of stone. His mind leapt between the immediate and the eternal, between human invention and natural law. This balance is what gives his work its timeless resonance. He did not only invent, he listened. He did not only design, he observed. His inventions may not all have flown or fought or built, but his insights into water and rock endure, as true now as when he first sketched them. His fascination with nature was not separate from his art. In his paintings, landscapes stretched beyond the figures, filled with winding rivers, jagged rocks, and hazy horizons. The backgrounds of the Mona Lisa or the Virgin of the Rocks are not decorative. They are studies infused with the same careful eye that filled his notebooks. His art and his science were not separate pursuits, but two ways of approaching the same mystery, the harmony of the world. As this section closes, let the sound of water linger in your imagination, the steady rush of a stream, the distant roar of a storm, the quiet drip of a cave. Leonardo heard in those sounds not just noise, but meaning. He saw in their movements not chaos, but design. To him, water and stone were teachers, showing how patience and persistence shape the world. From these studies of the earth and its forces, Leonardo's gaze turned once more toward the human hand, toward the objects people built to shape their lives. He moved from rivers and rocks into the realm of machines, crafting devices of surprising elegance and sometimes surprising strangeness. And so, we now follow him into a gallery of unusual contraptions, some playful, some practical, some utterly mysterious, where imagination itself became invention. From the tumbling rivers and silent stones of nature, Leonardo's attention often drifted back to the workshop table, where quills scratched and gears clinked in his mind's eye. Not every page of his notebooks was filled with grand visions of flight or the heavy machines of war. Some were devoted to devices that seemed, at first glance, playful, even whimsical. These inventions remind us that Leonardo was not only a painter of masterpieces and a thinker of immense ambition, but also a man with curiosity so wide it spilled into the oddest corners of possibility. In these pages, we glimpse his delight in puzzles, in cleverness for its own sake, and in contraptions that blur the line between useful tool and mechanical toy. One of the most charming of these inventions is his design for a mechanical lion. Records tell us that in 1515, when Leonardo was in France, he presented King Francis I with a lion that could walk forward and, upon stopping, open its chest to reveal lilies, the royal flower of France. Imagine the spectacle, a life-size automaton, its gears hidden within, moving with an uncanny lifelike stride. For an audience unaccustomed to such marvels, it would have seemed a creature conjured from myth, a fusion of art, engineering, and pageantry. Whether the design was fully realized remains debated, but the very idea reveals Leonardo's flair for wonder. Here was a machine not built to wage war or lift stone, but to astonish, to delight, to make jaws drop in amazement. Other contraptions, smaller and subtler, fill his pages. He sketched self-propelling carts, powered by wound springs and gears, precursors to what we might call a clockwork vehicle. He imagined mechanical drums that could play themselves, their rhythm driven by rotating cylinders fitted with pegs. He devised elaborate stage machines, pulleys to lower actors from the sky, mechanisms to create the illusion of storms, devices to make scenery shift as though by magic. In these, we see Leonardo the entertainer, the man who understood that machines could serve not just survival or dominance, but also joy, spectacle, and imagination. Some of his curious designs bordered on the humorous. He created sketches of machines for stretching pasta, for polishing mirrors, for turning spits over fires automatically. These were the sorts of devices that might have lightened household work or offered novelty at banquets. They remind us that invention need not always aim at grandeur. Sometimes it was about cleverness, about the quiet satisfaction of solving a problem no one else had thought to address. At times, his odd inventions feel almost like riddles. There are sketches of devices whose purposes are unclear, wheels within wheels, pulleys without obvious load, shapes that seem to fold and unfold without clear destination. Scholars have puzzled over these for centuries, debating whether they were abandoned ideas, private experiments, or simply Leonardo's way of keeping his mind limber. To us, they appear as fragments of dreams, the half-finished sentences of a restless imagination. What unites these contraptions is the sense of play within them. Leonardo, who could draw the mechanics of the heart with breathtaking accuracy, also allowed himself to dream of a machine that might walk like a lion or beat a drum without human hands. It is a reminder that curiosity does not always march in straight lines. It wonders, it plays, it invents for the sake of inventing. In these sketches, we see not just a master of proportion and perspective, but the boy from Vinci who once sketched birds in the fields, still alive in the man, still willing to tinker for wonder's sake. For the gentle listener, imagine opening one of his notebooks to find such a drawing. Not a weapon, not a flying machine, but a playful automaton or a clever household tool. Imagine Leonardo smiling faintly as he sketched, pleased by the elegance of a gale or the rhythm of a drumstick. These are the pages that breathe warmth into his legacy, showing that genius need not always be heavy or severe. Sometimes it dances. There is also something mysterious about these devices. Many were never built. Some may never have been intended to be. Were they practical plans? Or were they exercises of the mind, sketches meant only to test possibility? This ambiguity adds to their charm. They blur the line between reality and imagination, between invention and art, like dreams caught on paper. They invite us not to demand utility, but to marvel at creativity itself. And here again we find contrast. Leonardo, the designer of cannons and fortifications, was also Leonardo, the maker of mechanical lines and pasta machines. The duality is striking, but it is also deeply human. Genius rarely moves in one direction alone. It spirals, it leaps, it explores. In the odd contraptions, we glimpse the full breadth of his mind, a man who could hold both the weight of history and the lightness of play within the same hand. As his gallery of curiosities fades, we prepare to step into yet another side of his mind, the visions that push even further into mystery, into realms not merely playful but strange, almost fantastical. For Leonardo's imagination did not stop at lions and drums. It reached into territories where science blurred with dream, where the boundary between possible and impossible grew hazy. From the whimsical, we now drift into the strange, into machines and designs that seem less like tools and more like riddles left for us to ponder. Among the countless sketches that fill Leonardo's notebooks, there are some that stand apart not because of their utility, but because of their strangeness. These are the inventions that defy easy explanation, the half-born dreams that hover between reality and imagination. They speak of a mind unwilling to accept the ordinary limits of the world, a mind that wandered past the horizon of the possible into territories where ideas were not bound by practicality. To turn their pages is to watch a genius chase shadows and mysteries, reaching for something that feels more like poetry than engineering. One such design is his mechanical knight, sometimes called Leonardo's robot. Records suggest he envisioned a suit of armor that could sit, stand, and even wave its arms, powered by an intricate system of pulleys and gears hidden within. To us, it is a marvel, a machine centuries ahead of its time. But in Leonardo's own day, it must have seemed like a creation touched with magic, a figure halfway between man and automaton. The design itself was never fully built in his lifetime, yet later reconstructions, based on his sketches, have proven that it could indeed have worked. Here, Leonardo was not only imagining, but foreshadowing the future, the dawning dream of robotics. Other inventions drift further into the fantastical. He sketched machines to breathe underwater, with helmets connected to air tubes that would allow divers to remain hidden beneath the surface. He imagined entire underwater battle plans, with soldiers striking unseen from beneath the waves. To the Renaissance mind, the sea was still a realm of mystery, a place inhabited by legends and fays. Leonardo's diving suits belong as much to myth as to science, like the armor of a hero who walks the ocean floor. And yet, centuries later, the principle of his design would find echoes in the equipment of modern divers. Some of his inventions border on the surreal. There are drawings of perpetual motion machines, wheels that might turn endlessly without losing force, concepts we know today defy the laws of physics. Leonardo himself suspected this, writing in notes that perpetual motion is impossible. Yet he still sketched the wheels, still explored the puzzle, perhaps not out of belief but out of fascination. These designs are like philosophical riddles, diagrams of questions rather than solutions. They capture the restless curiosity of a mind unwilling to leave even impossibility unexamined. And then there are the flying ships of his imagination. Beyond the ornithopter and the helicopter-like aerial screw, Leonardo sketched visions of great winged machines that resemble creatures more than vehicles. Some spread their wings like bats, others stretch upward like strange sails. To look at them is to see not only engineering but dream, the human wish to leave Earth behind given a form both beautiful and bizarre. Most of these would never lift from the ground, but in their elegance lies a truth. Leonardo was not always trying to build machines for his own time. Sometimes he was sketching for the future, or perhaps for no one at all. What makes these inventions so haunting is their incompleteness. Many stop midline, half-finished diagrams with no explanation. They are fragments of thought caught in motion, dreams Leonardo perhaps never intended to finish. This incompleteness is part of their power. They invite us to imagine what he might have been thinking, to wonder whether he abandoned them because they were impossible, or whether he simply drifted onward to the next idea. There is also a sense of secrecy in these designs. Leonardo was known to write in mirror script, a habit that has long puzzled scholars. Was it to keep his ideas hidden, to prevent others from stealing them, or was it merely a quirk of comfort for a left-handed writer? In the case of his strangest inventions, the reverse writing only deepens the mystery. It is as if he was whispering to himself, tucking his most fantastical visions away where only the most determined could read them. For the gentle listener, these strange and unfinished designs are like dreams we half remember upon waking. They carry a shimmer of wonder but refuse to settle into clarity. They are at once brilliant and impossible, like stars reflected on water. In them we see Leonardo not as a master with every answer, but as a dreamer chasing questions that may never be resolved. This makes him feel closer, more human. We too know the feeling of imagining something just beyond reach, of sketching in our minds an idea that dissolves the moment we try to capture it. And so, in the silence of his workshop, Leonardo's hand moved across the page, giving shape to riddles. A night that walked without life, a wheel that turned forever, a ship that flew like a bird yet weighed too much to soar. These inventions were not failures. They were explorations, whispers of what might be possible, glimpses of a future not yet born. They remind us that not all genius rests in what is achieved. Sometimes it rests in the courage to dream beyond what is possible. From these strange visions, we are led naturally to consider another realm where Leonardo's mind wandered, the body itself. For just as he sought to understand machines that might never exist, he also turned his gaze inward, to the machinery of flesh and bone. With pen and knife, he mapped the hidden world beneath the skin, and in doing so, revealed truth that would shape science for centuries. From the unreal, we move to the profoundly real, from dreams of impossible machines to the most intricate invention of all, the human body. In the quiet of dimly lit chambers, away from the bright halls of courts and palaces, Leonardo da Vinci turned his mind to one of the deepest mysteries of all, the human body. For him, it was not enough to paint a face with lifelike grace or to sketch the muscles of a hand with astonishing precision. He wanted to see beneath the surface, to uncover the very machinery of life itself. To Leonardo, the body was the most intricate of all inventions, a perfect union of form and function, designed by nature with a mastery no human hand could rival. And yet, with his quill, he attempted to understand, to diagram, and in some sense, to recreate the miracle of flesh and bone. He began with simple observations, studying the way muscles stretched and contracted, how tendons pulled like ropes, how bones locked together like carefully carved joints of wood. His drawings of the human skeleton remain among the most beautiful images of anatomy ever produced, balancing precision with artistry. He drew skulls from multiple angles, cross-sections of vertebrae, and the hidden structures of the rib cage. These were not cold diagrams, but works of art infused with reverence to the elegance of nature's design. His eye saw not just the parts but their harmony, the way motion flowed through the body like music through an instrument. But Leonardo went further than mere observation. He carried out dissections, often in secrecy, working by candlelight with cadavers that others would have shunned. In an age when such work was both rare and controversial, he ventured into shadows that most avoided. With scalpel and ink, he peeled back layers, exploring not only the bones but the organs, the veins, the sinews. He drew the heart with astonishing detail, noting the spiral structure of its ventricles, a discovery only confirmed centuries later. He traced the branching rivers of arteries and veins, attempting to understand how blood moved through the body. Though he lacked the tools to fully grasp circulation, his observations brought him remarkably close to truths revealed only in later generations. His fascination with the body was not confined to its visible parts. He sketched the womb, studying the mystery of life before birth. He dissected animals to compare their organs with those of humans, searching for patterns that might reveal nature's underlying order. For Leonardo, the body was a machine of incomparable complexity, yet also a work of divine art. His notes often blur the line between science and poetry, describing the heart as the seat of the soul's vitality, the muscles as core to power, the bones as the scaffolding of life's architecture. The notebooks hold thousands of such drawings, arms stretched in motion, lips parted in speech, the delicate folds of lungs, the graceful curves of the spine. Yet most of these remain unseen in his lifetime. They were locked in his private pages, whispers of discoveries too far ahead for his age. It was only centuries later that scholars uncovered the magnitude of his anatomical work and realized how much he had anticipated modern science. And here lies one of the profound mysteries of Leonardo's legacy, how a man of the Renaissance, without microscopes or advanced instruments, could come so close to truths that would not be widely known until much later. His insight into the heart's motion, his near discovery of circulation, his recognition of the mechanics of breathing, all of these reveal a mind that soared deeper than his tools allowed. It is as though he were peering through a veil, glimpsing fragments of knowledge that his time was not yet ready to hold. Yet Leonardo's anatomy was never dry science. It was always infused with art. When he painted the twisting bodies of his figures, when he sculpted muscles in motion, the knowledge gleaned from his dissections came alive in brushstrokes and marble. The Vitruvian Man, perhaps his most famous drawing, stands at the perfect intersection of art and anatomy, symbol and science. It shows not only the proportions of the human body, but also Leonardo's belief that man himself was a reflection of the cosmos, a harmony of geometry and life. For the gentle listener, imagine sitting beside him in those quiet nights, the candle flickering, the parchment glowing faintly in the dark. Imagine his hand moving steadily, sketching the curve of a rib, the valves of a heart, the spiral of muscle. Around him, silence, broken only by the scratching of quill on paper. It is a scene both solemn and tender, one man, driven by boundless curiosity, seeking to unlock the mysteries hidden beneath the skin. And yet, much like his strange machines, his anatomical studies were unfinished, left scattered in notes and sketches. They were not gathered into the great treatise he dreamed of compiling. They remained fragments of knowledge, waiting centuries to be pieced together. But in their incompleteness lies a haunting beauty, for they capture not only discoveries but also the restless spirit of inquiry, the willingness to walk into shadow for the sake of understanding. In this realm, Leonardo reminds us that genius is not measured only by what is completed. Sometimes it is found in the pursuit itself, in the courage to ask questions others dare not. His anatomy bridges the gap between science and art, body and spirit, the visible and the hidden. It is both a study of mechanics and a meditation on the miracle of life. And so, as we close the pages of his anatomical notebooks, we are left with a sense of awe. The human body, the most intricate of all inventions, became for Leonardo both subject and symbol, a machine, a work of art, and a mystery all at once. From here, our path leads us back outward, to the world of imagination and vision once more, where Leonardo turned from the inward machinery of flesh to the outward machinery of wonder. Next, we will step into the realm of performance and pageantry, where his inventions found their place not in secrecy but in spectacle, dazzling courts and audiences with marvels of motion and illusion. From the intimate study of the human body, Leonardo's curiosity once again shifted outward, this time toward performance and spectacle. Beyond anatomy, flight, and the study of natural forces, he turned his mind to the delight of audiences, the enchantment of courtly pageantry, and the creation of moments that would make viewers gasp in astonishment. For Leonardo, invention was not solely about utility or survival. It could also exist for joy, wonder, and the stirring of imagination. In these endeavors, his machines became storytellers, and their mechanisms whispered secrets to the eyes of those who watched. Leonardo's notebooks describe devices for theatrical effects, automata for pageants, and intricate mechanisms for the stage. He imagined entire scenes transformed by clever engineering, platforms that rose or rotated, hidden levers that made scenery shift like magic, and mechanical figures that appeared to move under their own power. For a Renaissance audience, these effects must have felt miraculous. Imagine a court assembled to witness a festival or ceremony, the air heavy with expectation. Suddenly, a figure emerges, moving with lifelike precision, as though a spirit had entered the hall. This is a world Leonardo conjured, where the invisible gears and pulleys of his mind became visible wonder in the eyes of others. One of his most remarkable contributions to spectacle was his design for mechanical lines, not just as curiosities but as part of elaborate pageantry. In France, under King Francis I, he presented a line that walked, paused, and revealed the royal emblem inside its chest. The illusion combined art, mechanics, and surprise, an engineered marvel that thrilled onlookers while demonstrating Leonardo's mastery of both aesthetic and technical skill. The machine, in a way, became a performer itself, taking the stage alongside dancers, musicians, and actors. Leonardo also devised self-operating machines for music. Clockwork drums, organs, and other instruments could play without human hands, creating rhythms that would accompany ceremonies or entertain guests. These devices reveal a mind attuned to the subtleties of timing, motion, and performance. They were not mere curiosities. They required precise calculation, a deep understanding of forces, and an intuition for how the audience would perceive movement and sound. In these machines, Leonardo's engineering served the higher purpose of creating emotion, delight, and awe. Stagecraft, too, benefited from his inventive mind. He envisioned moving scenery that transformed settings and moments, puppets that enacted stories, and hidden mechanisms that allowed scenes to change as if by magic. He could control perception through geometry, light, and motion, shaping the experience of spectators, so that wonder felt spontaneous even though it was meticulously designed. This intersection of imagination, mechanics, and human psychology is a hallmark of his work and performance, a reminder that invention need not be practical to be profound. Even in these playful creations, Leonardo applied the same attention to detail and observation that informed his scientific work. Just as he studied the movement of muscles or the flow of water, he studied motion on stage, how a pulley's rotation could create a lifelike walk, how a counterweight could simulate the rising and falling of scenery, how timing could enhance a prize. His experiments were often iterative, sketches evolving over time, mechanisms refined in thought before ever being built. He treated the stage as a laboratory, a space where art and engineering merged seamlessly. For the listener drifting with these words, imagine entering a grand hall in Renaissance Italy. The room is filled with music, light, and anticipation. Hidden beneath the floorboards, within walls, or behind tapestries, machines lie in wait. Then, in a sudden moment, a lion walks forward, a figure rises from the floor, scenery shifts with the elegance of a living thing. The air is filled with a sense of enchantment, and yet everything operates with precision and logic, a marriage of magic and mechanics. Leonardo's mind created these moments not to dominate, but to delight, to provoke awe and admiration, to turn engineering into performance. There is a gentle contrast here, as in so many of Leonardo's pursuits. In the same life, he conceived war machines capable of destruction and playful automata that brought joy. He studied anatomy with solemn intensity and imagined machines for theater with lightness and whimsy. It is this duality that gives his work its richness, genius that can embrace both gravity and levity, function and fantasy, reality and dream. And though many of these stage machines were never built, their sketches convey the same vitality as a live performance. Lines on parchment become gears, levers, and pulleys in the mind's eye. They are invitations to imagine, to see not only what Leonardo drew, but what it would have felt like to witness his visions in motion. The careful observer can almost hear the clicking of mechanisms, the turning of wheels, the rhythm of drums, and the faint hiss of surprises unfolding. As this section closes, we are left with a sense of the human capacity for wonder. Leonardo's machines of performance remind us that invention is not solely measured by utility. It can exist to astonish, to entertain, to stir imagination, and to awaken the quiet thrill of curiosity. In a way, these machines are extensions of the mind itself, physical manifestations of thought made visible. From this realm of spectacle, the story now shifts to another domain where Leonardo's curiosity touched both art and science, the study of light, optics, and the subtle forces that make vision possible. We follow him from mechanical marvels on stage to the delicate mysteries that govern how we see the world, where observation once again bridges imagination and understanding. From the dance of machines on stage, Leonardo's attention often turned to the subtler performances of nature, those silent shows of light and shadow that shape the way we see the world. To him, vision was not merely the act of looking. It was a complex dialogue between the eye, the brain, and the external world. He was fascinated by how light traveled, how it reflected, refracted, and cast shadows, and how these effects could be harnessed both in art and in understanding nature. In a time before cameras or optical instruments, Leonardo's observations were both precise and poetic, blending science and wonder into a single inquiry. He studied the eye with meticulous care, dissecting it to reveal the lens, retina, and optic nerve. He sketched cross-sections that rival the detail of modern anatomy texts, noting the curvature of the lens, the flow of fluids within the eye, and the mechanisms by which the eye adjusted to light and focus. For Leonardo, the eye was a machine as remarkable as any automaton he had imagined, a device that translated the world into perception, that allowed humans to witness beauty, danger, and mystery alike. Understanding the eye was, for him, a way to understand how humans interpreted the world, and in turn, how art might capture or even enhance that perception. Shadow fascinated him equally. He observed how darkness could define form, how the absence of light could reveal depth and volume. In his paintings, chiaroscuro, the contrast between light and shadow, became a central technique, adding dimensionality and drama to figures. Leonardo's notebooks contain careful studies of how light falls on spheres, cubes, and landscapes, how reflections shift with angles, and how subtle gradation could evoke realism or illusion. He sought to capture not just what was seen, but the very process of seeing itself, understanding that light is a mediator between object and observer. Refraction and reflection occupied much of his attention. He experimented with mirrors, lenses, and prisms, noting how light bends and splits, how images can be inverted, and how surfaces change the appearance of objects. His curiosity was both theoretical and practical. He considered how these principles might be used in art, in design, and even in devices that could magnify or focus vision. In many ways, Leonardo approached optics like a sculptor approaches marble. He sought to reveal the hidden structures, to understand the shaping forces that bring perception into being. Even landscapes became studies of vision. He observed how distance, atmosphere, and light combine to create depth, how mountains fade into mist, how rivers reflect sunlight differently at dawn and dusk. He recorded the way shadows lengthen and soften, how colors shift under different lighting, and how subtle contrasts guide the eye through a composition. His paintings capture this understanding with breathtaking subtlety. Backgrounds fade into soft haze, figures emerge from darkness, and the world feels both tangible and ephemeral. For the gentle listener, imagine standing with Leonardo in a quiet field at sunset. The sun dips low, casting long shadows, turning grass into a sea of gold. He observes how the light softens the edges of a stone wall, how the shadow beneath a tree seems almost to hug the earth. He sketches in a small notebook, noting not only shapes but feelings, the interplay of brightness and darkness that creates a sense of depth and life. In his mind, art and science meet here, observing, recording, and interpreting the hidden rules that govern the play of light across the world. And here, as in all his pursuits, Leonardo bridges contrasts, the tangible and intangible, the mechanical and the ephemeral. Just as he built machines that astonished eyes, he studied vision itself to understand perception. Just as he explored the mechanics of flight or the structure of the body, he analyzed the delicate physics of light and shadow. His mind never rested. It moved effortlessly between scales and disciplines, always seeking patterns, always seeking truth. Even in his later years, Leonardo's fascination with optics continued to influence both his art and his engineering. He imagined devices that could project images, studies that prefigured principles of photography, and ways in which mirrors could manipulate light for effect. He seemed to understand that human experience is shaped not only by what exists but by how it is perceived, how reality is mediated through the senses and interpreted by the mind. The beauty of this pursuit lies in its subtlety. Unlike the spectacle of his stage machines or the dramatic ambition of flying devices, light and shadow operate quietly, often unnoticed, yet they define the world. Leonardo understood that the world's wonders are often hidden in the delicate interplay of forces, visible only to those who observe with patience and curiosity. In this way, his study of vision mirrors our own journey through his life, noticing details, tracing connections, and allowing even small phenomena to unfold into profound insight. As this chapter closes, we linger in the gentle hum of observation. Light flickers through leaves, shadows bend across hills, reflections shimmer on water. Leonardo reminds us that every glance is a study, every shadow a clue, every beam of light a path toward understanding. From these quiet insights, our story now moves toward reflection, considering the overarching legacy of a mind that bridged art and science, imagination and observation, the playful and the profound. As the sun sets on the vast landscape of Leonardo's life, it becomes clear that his genius cannot be measured by any single invention, painting, or observation. Instead, it lives in the totality of his curiosity, a mind that embraced the world in all its complexity, from the mechanics of flight to the silent flow of rivers, from the hidden architecture of the human body to the delicate play of light and shadow. His notebooks, sketches, and designs form a mosaic of exploration, a map of a mind that wandered freely across disciplines, connecting art, science, and imagination in ways few could ever dream. Leonardo's influence extends far beyond the Renaissance. His anatomical studies prefigured modern medicine. His observations of water and geology anticipated natural science. His sketches of flying machines inspired engineers centuries later. Even his unfinished and fantastical inventions, robots, mechanical lions, self-propelling vehicles, foreshadow the modern age of robotics and automation. His curiosity was contagious, a demonstration that imagination need not be constrained by immediate practicality. What mattered to Leonardo was a pursuit of understanding, the courage to dream, and the willingness to look deeply at the world around him. Artists continued to study his compositions and techniques, drawn to his mastery of proportion, perspective, and chiaroscuro. Scientists returned to his notebooks for insights into observation, mechanics, and natural phenomena. Engineers marvel at his foresight, recognizing in his designs a seed of technologies realized centuries later. Leonardo's life reminds us that curiosity itself is a form of creation, that observation is inseparable from invention, and that the act of dreaming can be as revolutionary as the act of building. Equally important is the way he balanced the tangible and the ephemeral, the playful and the profound. His life shows that genius is not only about results, but about wonder, the joy of noticing, questioning, and exploring. The mechanical lion that entertained kings, the flying machines that never left the page, the intricate sketches of anatomy, all testify to a mind that refused to settle for simplicity, that sought always to uncover hidden connections, to imagine worlds beyond the obvious. For the gentle listener, this legacy is more than historical fact. It is an invitation. Leonardo encourages us to observe more carefully, to question more deeply, to let our imaginations wander freely. Whether it is in sketching a leaf, watching the flow of a stream, marveling at the patterns of a bird's wing, or simply contemplating a shadow cast by the evening sun, his approach teaches that curiosity transforms perception. The world, like Leonardo's notebooks, is a landscape of possibility, waiting for attentive eyes and patient hearts. In reflecting on his life, one is struck by the contrasts that define it, the practical and the fantastical, the mechanical and the organic, the studied and the imagined. Leonardo's genius thrived in these spaces between extremes, where opposites meet and the mind can wander freely. He was a scientist who painted, an engineer who dreamed, an anatomist who appreciated poetry. His vision of the world was holistic, embracing complexity without fear, weaving together threads that others might have seen as disconnected. Even today, his legacy endures not only in art or science, but in the way we approach the unknown. The notebooks he left behind continue to be sources of wonder, sparking imagination in engineers, artists, scientists, and dreamers alike. They remind us that the pursuit of knowledge is itself an adventure, that observing the world closely can reveal hidden beauty, and that daring to imagine the impossible can lead to discoveries beyond our time. As we sit quietly in the soft light of reflection, we can let Leonardo's life settle like a gentle tide. His inventions, sketches, and studies were expressions of curiosity, reverence, and joy. They whisper across the centuries, inviting us to join him in noticing, questioning, and dreaming. They remind us that even in our own quiet moments, in the simple observation of nature or the playful sketch of an idea, we participate in the same timeless spirit of discovery that defined Leonardo da Vinci. And so, we move toward the final chapter, not with closure but with gentle contemplation. The story of Leonardo's life and inventions offers both fascination and calm, a reminder of human potential and the beauty of endless curiosity. In this final reflection, we allow all that we have explored, the anatomy, the machines, the flight, the water, the shadows, the spectacles, to merge into a quiet meditation on genius, imagination, and the enduring wonder of the world. As our journey through Leonardo da Vinci's extraordinary mind comes to its gentle close, it is fitting to pause and simply drift through the landscape of his imagination, letting the echoes of his curiosity wash over us like a calm river. The inventions, sketches, and studies we have explored are more than relics of a distant past. They are invitations to wonder, to observe, and to imagine. From the soaring flights of his ornithopters to the quiet flow of rivers he studied, from mechanical lines that delighted kings to the intimate lines of human anatomy, every page he left behind pulses with life, curiosity, and awe. In the stillness of this reflection, we sense the rhythm of Leonardo's mind, moving fluidly between opposites, the practical and the fantastical, the earthly and the celestial, the mechanical and the organic. He was a dreamer who sketched machines that might never be built, a scientist who measured the body with mathematical precision, an artist who captured the ephemeral dance of light and shadow. And yet, despite the vastness of his intellect, there is a warmth in his curiosity, a human tenderness that whispers through his drawings and writings. He invites us not just to admire, but to participate, to see the world with the same attentive wonder he brought to every observation. Imagine walking through the rooms of his studio, the flicker of candlelight casting gentle shadows across scattered sketches. Perhaps a mechanical line rests silently in a corner, still waiting to spring to life. Pages of anatomy lie nearby, tracing the silent harmony of muscles and bones. On another table, sketches of flying machines stretch across parchment, wings frozen in ink yet alive in imagination. Outside, rivers flow and mountains rise as they did centuries ago, quietly performing the natural rhythms that Leonardo so meticulously observed. In this space, time feels fluid. The past and present merge in a gentle meditation on curiosity and creativity. Leonardo's genius lies not only in what he accomplished, but in how he thought, relentlessly, tenderly, and without fear of exploring the unknown. Every invention, every observation, every sketch represents a bridge between what is and what might be. He reminds us that imagination is not separate from understanding, that the act of observing is itself a form of creation, and that even the smallest detail, a bird's wing, a droplet of water, a shifting shadow, can open a window into deeper truths. For the quiet listener, there is solace in this reflection. Leonardo's world moves at a gentle pace, one that does not demand immediate comprehension, but encourages patient attention. His flying machines, his automata, his studies of anatomy and light, they are all invitations to linger, to drift, and to let wonder take root in the mind. There is a calmness in knowing that curiosity can be endless, that a life dedicated to observing, imagining, and questioning can leave a legacy that continues to inspire centuries later. As we let our thoughts wander through Leonardo's visions, a pattern emerges. His mind sought connections. He observed the movements of rivers and the flapping of wings, the turning of gears and the beating of hearts, the arc of light across a landscape and the unfolding of human anatomy. He saw unity in diversity, patterns in chaos, and harmony in complexity. This ability to connect seemingly unrelated phenomena is what made him extraordinary, and it is what allows his legacy to endure. Every sketch, every note, every invention is a testament to a mind that embraced both the known and the unknown. And now, as we prepare to drift away from his world, let us carry with us a gentle sense of possibility. Leonardo teaches us that curiosity can be patient and playful, that learning can be an art, and that imagination has no bounds. Whether observing the delicate ripple of water, the curve of a bird's wing, or the shadow cast by the evening sun, we are invited to notice, to wonder, and to dream. In this way, his spirit lingers in the quiet corners of our own thoughts, encouraging us to explore with gentleness, to question with patience, and to imagine with joy. In these final moments, we leave behind the mechanical marvels, the anatomical studies, the fantastical sketches, and the whispered questions of centuries past. Yet the essence of Leonardo remains, his vision of the world as a place rich with patterns, mysteries, and beauty. It is a vision that transcends time, inviting us to move slowly, to observe deeply, and to let our minds soar and drift, guided by curiosity and wonder. So, as the night deepens and our thoughts settle like soft shadows across the landscape of imagination, we carry with us the quiet, enduring legacy of a dreamer. Leonardo da Vinci's world is vast, intricate, and endlessly captivating, and even in silence, it continues to speak, to inspire, and to lull the mind into gentle contemplation. In drifting through his inventions, observations, and visions, we have glimpsed not only the genius of a man, but the timeless beauty of curiosity itself, a gift that endures in every moment we pause to wonder. And with that, we leave Leonardo's world behind, not as a conclusion, but as a gentle invitation to continue observing, imagining, and dreaming in our own quiet way.